The events of this story begin in Sutton County. When the sun was setting by the window, the main heroine stood and looked out of it. Beside her stood the butler, to whom the young woman turned. She asked the man if there was any news from Eddie. The interlocutor avoided the question and told the Countess that everything was just as it had been. There had been no word from Mr. Eddie lately. The heroine sadly wondered where he could have gone at such a difficult time for them. It turned out that the Seventh Empire was on the brink of ruin. The previous night, there had been an attack on the imperial palace by unknown assailants. The last emperor of the Seven Hills, named Hildar, had been a tyrant. That was precisely why he had been recently overthrown. Because of this, the nobles of the empire had locked their doors, awaiting their punishment. Among them was the head of the Sutton family, Roville Sutton. At that very moment, she stood by the window, wondering where her brother Eddie had gone. At the same time, a man burst into the room and addressed the Countess. He immediately announced that the soldiers who had attacked the palace were already there, which meant they were now under siege. Upon hearing this, the heroine did not panic. She thought that now, with the emperor dead, those soldiers must have come here after attacking the palace. After all, she understood that, as the head of the family, she was obliged to protect her kin at any cost. Then the young woman decided to go meet those people. As soon as she did, the butler addressed the Countess, asking where she was going. Everyone tried to convince her it was dangerous to go out and asked her to return. But the young woman ignored them and continued on her way. Then she flung open the front door, and what she saw before her stunned her. It was her brother, whom she had not seen in a long time. He greeted his sister with a smile and asked if he had arrived too late. The heroine immediately asked Eddie what he was doing there. The young man told her he had prepared a gift she would surely like. Then he knelt before her and showed the gift, a crown. The heroine was shocked and asked if it was really him who had started the uprising. Some time after those events, the heroine sat on the throne wearing the crown. Her brother sat beside her, saying that now, since the coronation ceremony was over, his little sister had become the true empress. Suddenly, the young woman asked Eddie to listen to her. The young man asked what she wanted to say. With sadness, she asked him why he had done all this. Her brother smiled and said that 2 years ago, in winter, his sister had once told him something, that if she were the empress, she would do things much better. That was why he had done it all. The heroine was shocked and asked if he had really decided to make her words come true. Then the heroine reflected that blood had already been spilled, and now she would have to deal with the consequences herself. After all, one couldn't reattach the head of the former emperor. After her thoughts, she asked her brother to summon the scribes. Surprised, he asked what she was going to do. She told him that an empress must fulfill her duties properly. Then she asked if he wanted his sister to become like the previous headless emperor. The young man smiled and said that since she was his dear sister, he wasn't worried about her. He added that the role suited her far better than it had the old man before her. At that moment, the heroine remembered her own words that if she were empress, she would do things better. She knew she had said it as a joke, but now it no longer mattered. Then the young woman ordered the butler to tie her brother to a chair. He replied to Her Highness that it would be done. The brother was shocked and asked what his sister was doing. And so, the Empire of the Seven Hills gained a new ruler. The first empress of the Seven Hills became a young woman named Roville Sutton. It could have been seen as a step toward the future, yet things were far from joyous. Shortly after becoming empress, the heroine began working in her office. Some time had passed since then. She sat at her desk, while her brother lounged on the couch nearby. Suddenly, the heroine struck the table and declared that she'd had enough. She had spent 3 whole months trying to clean up the empire's problems left by the former ruler. Then she gloomily noted that, as if she didn't already have enough work. Hearing this, her brother asked whether they hadn't already dismissed the unnecessary people, meaning she was overworking herself for nothing. The heroine rose and said there were only 4 dukes in the north, south, west, and east, and she didn't trust any of them. Moreover, there weren't many people she could fully rely on. Her brother noted that 3 families had fled because of the struggle for the throne. He said he was the one who kept an eye on things after the old tyrant and was always on guard. He added that he wouldn't let them replace his sister. The Empress sat down beside him and reminded Eddie that civil strife was forbidden, asking if he had forgotten. That would only increase her workload. The young man picked up a grape, said he understood, and handed it to her. Smiling again, he said that his sister must be very talented if she had managed to make the head of the inspection group change his views. He told her not to worry, she would handle everything. Hearing that, the heroine asked what talent he was talking about and where he saw any talent in her. She added that if she truly had any, she would have been married 3 times by now. She also wondered how to make people stay when they kept running away from so much work. Indeed, everyone avoided her because she overloaded them with tasks. She sighed that there wasn't a single person who was smart, attentive, healthy, and wouldn't quit. She dreamed of a man who would tell Her Highness that she could rely on him, or that the documents she had given him were already done, or at least that there had been mistakes, but he had already fixed them himself. As she pondered all this, she thought of another option: resignation. Maybe she should find someone more competent to take her place. Then, with great effort, she struck the table again, catching her brother's attention. He asked what was wrong with her. Smiling, the heroine turned to her brother Eddie and announced that she needed to get married. When she said that, the young man immediately began thinking. He admitted that her age still allowed her to marry, if only there were a suitable man for the role. Then he suddenly shouted that her chosen one must be the strongest man on the continent. His sister objected, saying she wanted no such thing. She told her brother to listen carefully. She needed someone who would listen attentively, be reliable, and, most importantly, useful, someone like their butler, perhaps. Eddie immediately jumped up and ran to the door, saying he understood and that he would find someone suitable for his busy sister right away. The young woman was surprised and asked whom he was planning to look for. Then she suddenly felt uneasy. The heroine knew she had only one brother, named Eddie Sutz. Their father had died when Eddie was still very young. When the girl was 14, their mother, who had carried the family alone, passed away as well. Because of that, as children, she and her brother had to focus on maintaining the Sutton family. At that time, the boy had been very young, and the girl had no time for him, so Eddie had to leave their home for 6 whole years. The girl herself died at the age of 27, and Eddie's departure was her greatest regret in her past life. But after her death, she was given another chance to go back to when she was 14. The first thing she did after being reborn was to run to Edwin and hug him tightly, out of gratitude for his sincerity. After that, her brother grew into a clever and strong young man. He even earned the title of a fencing genius. However, rumors later spread calling him the notorious madman of Philand. Before the tournament began, the heroine tried her best to restrain her brother. She sat in her office thinking that she had raised him by letting him do whatever he wanted. Her subordinate approached her, but she told Kyle that she was fine. Then she reviewed the list of participants and asked if it was complete. The subordinate replied that it was. All 178 people were gathered. Hearing this, the heroine was pleased that so many candidates had shown up. Suddenly, she noticed the name Dalton Pagos on the list. She remarked that the Duchy of Pagos from the east had also decided to participate in the tournament. They claimed that ascending the throne without the consent of the 4th Duke was illegal. The heroine wondered if they were planning something bad. The heroine realized that all 4 duchies of the empire were taking part in this conflict. Still, she disliked admitting herself as empress. If the dukes united their forces and gathered an army, it would put her in a very difficult position. She still lacked firm authority. Then the young woman told Kyle to brief her on the participants from those duchies. The young man agreed and said he would do everything Her Majesty asked. The first candidate he named was Dalton Pagos, known as the strongest knight in the East. He was 23 years old and the second son of the Duke, but he was expected to inherit the title. He was famous for his leadership, but was somewhat impatient. The heroine told him to go on to the next candidate. The next one was Yaphet Delmoy from the south. He was 26 and a brilliant man who had demonstrated great swordsmanship at the Imperial Academy. The heroine said that none of these candidates suited her. She asked if any of the candidates had experience in estate management, or if one of them was particularly skilled in economics or politics. She also mentioned that it would be even better if they could resolve internal conflicts within the empire. Her subordinate looked at his list and immediately replied that most of the candidates were only skilled in swordsmanship. The heroine then asked why such people were even participating in this kind of event. The young man explained that it was because they would have to face Sir Edwin. That was why he mainly selected candidates with excellent sword-fighting skills. The young woman was surprised and asked what he had just said. She wondered if her brother had decided to ruin all her wedding plans. After all, she needed a capable man, not just another swordsman. Kyle then added that there was still the Northern Duke, Dehard. He said everyone believed that he would reach the finals and face Sir Eddie. The young woman asked in surprise if he meant Duke Dehard. The heroine knew that Duke Haven Dehard was from the Northern Duchy. Everyone feared him, calling him the monster of the North. But she knew this man from her past life, and he was completely harmless. The young woman thought that if he really were a monster, his duchy would have had very different motives. She also knew that if she married one of the dukes, it would delay the ambitions of the others for a while. The heroine understood that she would not allow Eddie to ruin such a perfect candidate for her. The Empress suddenly stood up, and her subordinate asked if she was going somewhere. Before leaving, she smiled and said she was going to tear someone's legs off. A little later, her brother was sitting before her. The young woman shouted at him to raise his hands higher. He, in turn, asked whether she thought he was worse than the other candidates and if she really wanted to have weaklings by her side. At that moment, the sister grew furious but soon calmed down. Then she said that what was done and couldn't be changed. She then reminded Eddie that she had already said she would decide for herself whom to marry. She would observe the candidates for a year to see who suited her for the role. Therefore, she forbade him from interfering in this matter. Smiling, he remarked that no one weaker than him should be by her side, but she shouldn't worry, for he would take care of anyone who tried to hurt her. The heroine barely contained her emotions and repeated that she had already said enough. She also thought that she would have to stay alert. A short time later, someone entered the Empress's chamber. The person asked if Her Majesty had called for her. It was Cecile Bright, the commander of the Imperial Internal Affairs Inspection Unit. The heroine smiled and invited her to come in, then asked how she had been doing these days. Cecile looked surprised and asked what she meant, adding that she couldn't even remember the last time she went home. Then she asked whether there was a new order, since Her Majesty had summoned her. The Empress said she knew Cecile was very busy and apologized for disturbing her, but she wanted to ask if Cecile could keep an eye on Eddie for a while. The heroine explained that she just didn't want to leave everything unattended. The commander replied that she understood. She also mentioned that she had tried assigning knights to Sir Edwin, but it had never worked out. Then she turned to Her Majesty and asked if she was sure that her relationship with Sir Edwin was still the same as before. The heroine asked what she was talking about, saying that it would be hard to find a brother and sister as close as they were anywhere in the Empire. The captain said that last month Edwin had secretly crossed the border. It turned out he had brought back with him the elixir of Manglada, a special potion from the Kingdom of Grime. That meant he might have mixed it into the Empress's food. Cecile added that it didn't matter how small the dose was, no one knew why he had done it, and worse, he had done it secretly from his sister. Hearing all this, the heroine just laughed. She said there was nothing to worry about. This was simply one of Edwin's old hobbies, along with running away. She explained that ever since their parents had passed away, he had become obsessed with his sister's health. When he was 16, he had once run away and brought back some kind of medicine from the south, insisting that she eat it. She had been furious at the time and told him not to bring her any more of it, which was probably why he had switched to secretly slipping it into her food instead. The heroine said that was just the kind of person he was, and the woman shouldn't worry. Thanks to him, after all, she was still healthy. The captain replied that if Her Majesty said so, then she understood. She added that she would do her best regarding Sir Edwin, but warned not to expect too much. She also mentioned that she would send a report as soon as she received new information about the four dukes. The heroine agreed, and Cecile left her chamber. A short while later, the young woman collapsed from exhaustion. She thought that it was still better than what had happened with the potion. She realized that she needed to find a husband as soon as possible, someone to share her duties with, or she really would die of overwork in this life. Sometime later, the tournament finally began. The Empress was to appear before the public, where her brother was waiting for her. As she arrived, the candidates knelt before her on one knee. The heroine sat on her throne and carefully examined each of them. After a few moments, she told the men to rise. The first ones she saw were the heirs of the Pagos and Delmoy families. The next was the man known as the Monster of the North, Haven D. Hard, a man she remembered from her past life. Shortly after, the Empress declared the tournament open, and the event began. At that moment, she was thinking about Haven D. Hard. She remembered their first meeting, during a winter harsher than ever, on her way home. It had been 14 years ago, when she was just a young girl burdened with the duties of family head. Everyone had mocked, ignored, and tried to deceive her. She had long been betrayed and even forced to sell her possessions. Everyone had turned away from her, and her last hope had been the journey north. She noticed that his features were just as rough as they had been back then. Back then, that young man from the distant north, Haven D. Hard, had reached out his hand to help her. Now, as she thought about it, she realized that going north had been the right choice. She wondered if the young man had blushed back then because she had been trembling before him, or for another reason entirely. She also thought about his nickname, Monster of the North. After all, he had always been the benefactor of the Sutton family. Suddenly, her brother spoke, saying that the tournament was starting. The first duel was between the Southern Lord, Sir Yaphet Delmoy. They crossed swords immediately, and the Empress asked her brother whether Delmoy would win. He asked in return if she couldn't see for herself, and whether her eyes were just for decoration. The heroine remarked that it had been a long time since she had packed him lunches and watched his fencing practice. After a short while, Duke Delmoy was declared the victor. The heroine smiled happily and told her brother to look, she had been right. The young man replied that it was no surprise, since she was his sister, and that the next match would feature Sir Pagos. The young woman asked if that was true and when the final match would be held. Her brother said it would likely be in a week. The heroine immediately thought that the upcoming meeting might get delayed because of this, and asked if he realized they had only a week. But deep down, she thought that at this point, any candidate would do. The sooner she found a capable worker, the better. While they were talking, Sir Pagos was fighting. He had already nearly defeated his opponent and pointed his sword at him. Then he raised his weapon to finish him off, and with a smile, told him to finally die. Hearing this, the heroine sighed sadly and turned to her brother. Without waiting for her to say anything, he immediately rushed toward the arena. He knew that killing was forbidden in their tournament. At the very last moment, he managed to block the attacking man's sword. The defeated opponent was terrified, thinking he was about to die. But the heroine's brother managed to save him. Now he stood with his blade aimed at the disarmed aggressor. Then Sir Pagos objected, addressing the Empress and demanding to know how they could defile a sacred tradition. After all, Sir Sutton had no right to interfere in the middle of a tournament match. The main heroine asked what kind of sacred tradition he was talking about. She also noted that if he called it sacred, it would incur God's wrath. After all, anyone who dared to kill their opponent would be considered a criminal. But the man, in turn, remarked to the heroine that they were setting new rules right in the middle of the event, and that was completely unfair. The Empress told him that the essence of the tournament was to choose her future husband. So she asked, what was the problem if she herself set the rules? After that, she decided to leave the event, saying that she didn't think this duel was worth her attention. Then she turned to Eddie and said that from now on, he would be the one overseeing the tournament. Her brother heard this and said that he would do so. The main heroine thought she had gotten rid of such trash, but it turned out to be the opposite. On that very day, after the start of the tournament, she had a meeting. She hadn't even suspected that after ascending the throne, she would have to face such spectacular nonsense. The North, together with the Seven Hills, restrained the Gripton Empire. Next to them was the Zilton Empire and the friendly nation of the Seven Hills. However, trade disagreements had arisen between Zilton and the Empire. The reason for this was the difference between the gold coins of the Seven Hills. minted from 12 grams of gold, and the gold coins of Zilton, minted from 14 grams of gold. It turned out that the emperor's aunt had embezzled 320,000 gold coins. Zilton, which had been patient for the sake of friendship with the Seven Hills, officially filed a protest. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, on the verge of bankruptcy, declared that it was unable to compensate for the demands put forth by the Zilton Empire. One of the officials was reporting all this to the empress. After a short while, the heroine told him to shut his mouth. The man asked Her Majesty what she had just said to him. The heroine told him not to worry about it and simply follow the soldiers. That was all that was required of him. The man said that this was terrible. Did the empress mean to say that she intended to cut open his stomach? The girl asked if he had trouble hearing. Since he clearly understood, she ordered her subordinates to slice him up nicely and in half. The man immediately fell to his knees and began to beg Her Majesty to spare him, saying he regretted everything. Another man addressed Her Majesty, noting that such a punishment was too harsh for someone who had served the empire diligently for so many years. The empress immediately shouted, "Too harsh?" She said she was ashamed to see the result of 12 years of this man's incompetence. That was why she even found herself curious about what was so special about cutting open a belly. When something happened, they could never find a solution. She asked whether they were capable of taking responsibility and resolving problems properly. She also asked why the empire's taxes should cover their mistakes. Then she turned back to the man and said that if he told her the truth, she wouldn't cut him open. She asked if he truly hadn't known that Marcus and the emperor's aunt were embezzling the money. As a result, a few days later, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs was beheaded for taking bribes. The pursuit of wealth by the former emperor's family had come to an end. The heroine, by forming an emergency fund, compensated the Zilton Empire for its losses. The emergency fund was a personal budget meant to ensure financial security in case of unforeseen expenses. Around this time, the tournament was already approaching its final stage. Her brother came up to the main heroine. Running up to her, he said she looked rather tired. He also mentioned that he had been told she hardly touched her soup that day. Was that true? The main heroine said she was just a little tired. Then she asked if he had added something to her soup again. It tasted strange. Her brother said it was better for his sister not to know. The girl, with a sad expression, said that what she needed wasn't medicine but a proper husband. The young man told her that if that was the only problem, she shouldn't worry, the Duc de Hard would most likely win. The empress asked what he was talking about. She was curious how he could know that, since the tournament wasn't even over yet. Her brother told her that the Duke was the strongest in the north and asked if that wasn't true. After a short while, the heroine arrived at the final of the tournament. There, Haven de Hard was fighting. The main heroine sat watching anxiously, remembering everything he had done for her in her past life. His opponent turned out to be the same man who had tried to kill another contestant. Their fierce battle began, and they crossed swords. The empress and the rest of the audience watched the thrilling fight intently. Duc de Hard dominated his opponent almost the entire time. After a short while, the heroine's favorite struck his opponent's sword with his own and shattered it. Thus, he became the winner of the duel. His opponent could no longer fight, as his weapon was destroyed. A moment later, Haven de Hard was declared the champion of the tournament. Seeing this, the heroine was overjoyed. This was the man she wanted as her husband. Shortly after, the man approached the empress, knelt, and said that his name was Haven de Hard of the Northern Lands. He added that he dedicated his victory to Her Majesty. The main heroine extended her hand and said she gladly accepted it. The man then kissed her hand. The heroine thought that finally it had happened. She looked at the man kissing her hand and thought that she had finally found a worker, someone constant, who would stay with her until the grave. Some time later, the man approached her again. The girl asked what Duc de Hard wanted. Smiling, she congratulated him once more on his victory in the tournament. The man apologized for bringing news so soon, but said he had a question for Her Majesty. There was something he wished to know. The heroine asked what it was. He asked whether her younger brother, Count Satin, was insane. The girl was shocked and froze in place. Then she came to her senses a little and asked what Eddie had done to him. The man said that, generally speaking, if he hadn't participated in the tournament, her brother would have gone straight to the Grypton Empire and caused trouble there. If he had killed one of their two commanders, it would have started a war. Hearing that, the Empress was horrified by her brother's actions. The girl understood that if the Grypton Empire started an invasion, Duke Dehard's northern duchy would be the first to suffer, since it was closest to the border. Now the girl knew that Eddie had threatened the Duke to make him take part in the tournament. It turned out that Dehard was a good man, but unfortunately, he had been forced to come. The Empress said that if her brother had threatened the man and forced him into war, he had the right to refuse and return home if he wished. But then the man said that, on second thought, perhaps striking back wasn't such a bad idea. The heroine was shocked to hear those words from him. She immediately wondered what he meant by striking back. The Duke said that, in fact, it would mean war with the Empire. Was he right? He also said that since he had won the tournament, Her Majesty wouldn't just sit idly by while his homeland was in danger. The girl thought that this clearly smelled of her crazy brother's schemes. She said that maybe that was true, but they should consider more than just that. Immediately after that, the man took her hand and placed it over his heart. Then he asked why it had to be this way. He then leaned closer to her and said that he already belonged to her. The main heroine was shocked by this turn of events and said that wasn't true. A moment later, she withdrew her hand and said that she still had to make the final decision about who would be chosen, meaning he wasn't the only contender. The Duke said, "So, you still haven't decided?" The girl replied that yes, that was right, she planned to observe all the candidates over the coming year. The man remarked that she had a whole year then. Renia continued, saying that if this didn't suit him, he could return north immediately. Then the man asked Her Majesty whether she didn't like him. The girl thought that he was certainly a valuable person, but things weren't that simple. She told him it wasn't about whether she liked him or not. He said he understood, but the girl had greatly caught his attention. At that, the heroine blushed. She thought that if he behaved well during the year, she might as well add him to her list of potential suitors, though it was better he didn't know that. Then she stepped closer to him, touched his chin with her hand, and smiled, saying she hoped they understood each other well. The man pressed her hand closer to himself and said he would never let her down. Some time later, the girl was sitting in her office again, busy with a mountain of work. She also thought that since the tournament was over, she could start assigning everyone new duties. Suddenly, there was a knock on her door, and the heroine told them to come in. It was the butler, who told Her Majesty that there were people requesting an audience. The heroine immediately asked who they were. The butler said they were Pagos Dalton from the east and Japhet Delmoy from the south. Both men were already kneeling before the Empress. They said they had come with a message from the southeast for Her Majesty. The girl immediately thought that she had suspected something like this. It was strange that the two duchies had joined forces, and she wondered what it all meant. One of the men introduced himself as Pagos Dalton. He said that he wished to be chosen as the national tournament's finalist. He added that if she chose him as the winner, both the eastern and southern duchies would remain loyal to House Satin. Upon hearing this, the main heroine said that she did not like this at all. She added that she could not accept such a thing. Besides, didn't they lose to Duke Dehard during the competition? She wondered. The interlocutor asked if Her Majesty realized what she was saying, or if she did not understand the meaning of their proposal. The girl, in turn, thought that by sending such a child as a messenger, these people must consider themselves superior. After a short pause, the heroine told Pagos Dalton that it was not she but he who did not understand what he was talking about. She then asked if he would only swear loyalty to her in case of marriage. She noted that if that was true, then did it mean that if she did not marry him, he would stand against her. She added that in that case, she would be forced to have their heads cut off and declare them traitors. The interlocutor replied that Her Majesty was mistaken. After all, both their families had not conspired to betray her. However, as founders of the Seven Hills, they wished to offer her power that could strengthen her position in the current situation. The man asked the Empress to make the southeast her stronghold. He said they would consider it an honor to become her right hand. Hearing these persuasive words, the heroine thought he was indeed good at convincing people. Then the main heroine turned again to Pagos Dalton. She said to tell his father that his intentions should be more sincere. She also added that he should know his second son was not to her taste. Both men were shocked by her words. Then she addressed the other man and asked him to stay for a while because she wanted to clarify something with him. The first man left the room, and only the one she had called remained. At that moment, the girl addressed Sir Yaphet Delmy. She asked if the Southern Duchy would also benefit when she married Pagos. She added that the man could think about it as much as he wished. The interlocutor immediately asked Her Majesty whether it was not enough that he was her loyal subject. The main heroine smiled and said that she thought they would offer her to choose one of them. But since they came together, that was clearly not the case. She added that this man used to be a candidate himself, but now he was nothing more than the bridesmaid, so to speak. She wondered if he had come only to celebrate Pagos' achievements. The interlocutor listened attentively, but he was not pleased by her words. Then he bowed to the girl and said that Her Majesty's will would be conveyed to his father. After sending those men back to the south and east, the main heroine spent the rest of the day doing paperwork. Some time later, an important moment came. The Empress had changed into her luxurious gown, and her brother admired her, saying that she looked beautiful in it. It was time for the banquet, where the final winner of the national tournament would be announced. After all preparations, everything was finally ready to begin. A short while later, the Empress arrived, and it was announced that Her Majesty had entered, accompanied by her brother and the recent tournament winner. Shortly after, Duke d'Hard approached Her Majesty. He extended his hand and asked if she would do him the honor, for he wished to dance with her. The Empress agreed, and they began to spin together in the dance. The heroine carefully looked at him, wondering if he thought she was beautiful. Then the girl leaned toward Haven and whispered softly in his ear that he should come to her personal office in the morning. Hearing that, the man asked if people usually said to come to their room that very evening instead. The heroine immediately told him not to talk nonsense. He, in turn, realized he had misunderstood and said he knew it all along. Some time later, the man fulfilled the Empress's request. When he arrived, the girl greeted him warmly and introduced her first secretary, Kyle. She told the secretary that this was her future husband, Duke d'Hard. Both men exchanged meaningful looks. The Duke thought that this secretary was always by Her Majesty's side. Kyle, in turn, thought that from now on, he would be seeing this man much more often. Then the main heroine addressed her future husband and told him not to scare the secretary. She would not repeat herself twice. The man noted that he would keep that in mind. After a while, the Empress said that they should start by reviewing these documents. She asked what the man would do if he were in her place, approve or reject them. The interlocutor began carefully reading and analyzing them. After studying them, he placed the papers on the table and said that he would reject them for 3 reasons. The heroine was surprised and immediately asked the man to name all 3. He said, first of all, this was not even worth considering. The proposed tax would either be abolished or reduced due to increasing public dissatisfaction. Therefore, in his opinion, it should be further reduced. Secondly, he pointed out that although it looked reasonable, in reality it was nonsense. Recently, the Yale lands had been resettled and many families migrated there. Yet somehow, there were still starving people. The man said it would be wise to find out what was going on there, whether it was deceit or something more serious. The Empress then asked what the 3rd reason was. The future husband noted that they should first stop developing mineral mines in the Delmy Mountains. It was also necessary to investigate the connection between the 2 neighboring territories that wanted to turn these mountains into a border. Because if they failed to act in time, it could end in a territorial conflict. The main heroine carefully listened to his words and thought that this man was exactly what she had been looking for. All 3 problems he named were things she had overlooked. Even the solutions he proposed suited her perfectly. After that, she decided that whatever this eccentric man said next didn't matter. Then she turned to him and asked if he would like to have a cup of tea with her. A little later, they were sitting together, drinking tea. The main heroine said that she thought the engagement could be arranged as early as next week. The man replied with surprise that at the banquet yesterday, she had hinted that there was no need to rush. The heroine said that she had changed her mind and asked if that displeased him. The Duke said that it was not so at all. He added that he would agree to an engagement even tomorrow. Looking closely at the girl, he remarked that she seemed pleased. She told him that was only natural. She added that, after all, how could she be unhappy when such a useful man would be by her side? He then asked what she meant by the only one. The Empress immediately said that she was thinking of taking a lover after marriage. The Duke was furious and shocked by her words. He stood up and shouted that he would not stand by and watch her share her love with someone else. The main heroine quickly said that he misunderstood. She explained that what she meant was that it was important to have as many allies on her side as possible. Hearing this, Haven said that if she chose to marry someone else, it would end in bloodshed. The main heroine was stunned by his behavior and told him that she meant adding someone to her harem. Once again, the man addressed Her Majesty. He kissed her hand and then vowed to protect her. He said that if the 4 families crossed the border, he would bring her their heads. And if Gripton dared to invade, he would immediately send his troops to defend her and ensure no harm befell the Empress. The future husband then declared that he would protect Her Majesty no matter what. The main heroine blushed slightly and asked what he was saying. She wondered if he was about to declare that he wished to unite the entire continent. The man replied that if Her Majesty desired it, he would fulfill her will at once. But the girl stopped him and told him to calm down and not act like her brother Eddie. She also said that this was an order. The man agreed to obey. The heroine thought that if she could make this man and her brother become friends, the result would be twice as effective. Then she placed her hand on his and said that if he promised her one thing, she might reconsider her decision about the harem. She said that if he promised always to be on her side, to support her, and to stay by her until death separated them, she would reconsider. The man, without hesitation, swore by his life that he would fulfill this. Hearing that, the girl was overjoyed and thought that she had finally found an ally. Some time later, her future husband left, and the heroine sat alone, drinking tea and eating cake. She thought that choosing Haven had been an excellent decision. She hadn't felt this good in a long time. Then she reached for another piece of cake and thought that if he truly had such talent, she should arrange the engagement as soon as possible. She would even make him sign a lifelong contract. At that moment, the heroine tasted the cake before her and froze from the bitterness. She immediately realized that this must be Eddie's doing again. Even setting aside the fact that he likely added something to it, the flavor was unbearably bitter. She thought that the next time she saw him, she would tell him exactly what she thought, whether he liked it or not. Just then, someone knocked and entered her room. It was the maid, who said that the commander of the knights had arrived. The girl asked if it was Cecil, and if so, to let her in. The subordinate immediately entered the room. The girl asked if there was any news. The knight captain apologized for disturbing her and said that she had urgent news for the Empress. The main heroine asked, with surprise, what had happened. The captain said that there had been a mass kidnapping in Finland not long ago. She also said that she had just been informed that 7 people had been abducted from the nearby imperial cities. The missing were prominent figures from various walks of life. The girl asked who exactly had been kidnapped. The interlocutor reported that a professor of law from the academy had been abducted, as well as the 3rd daughter of Count Gideon. Among the missing were also a famous architect, a 75-year-old historian named Timales, and several others. Suddenly, the main heroine stopped her and said that the captain had already told her enough. Everything was clear, but what she really wanted to know was the motive behind all these actions. Cecil replied that she would tell Her Majesty everything right away. She noted that they had testimony from a witness who had seen the kidnapping of the 4th victim. After that, she reported that a young man resembling Her Majesty's brother had tried to seize one of the men and shouted that Her Majesty wished to see him. The captain confirmed that those were his exact words. The main heroine sat there, shocked by this revelation, immediately wondering what on earth her brother Eddie was up to this time. Then the captain added that the kidnapped people were currently in Sutton County. It appeared that they were unharmed and would be released soon. But she hesitated and admitted she could hardly find the words to explain that all this was connected to rumors about Her Majesty. The heroine asked what kind of rumors she was talking about. The interlocutor explained that the rumors claimed Her Majesty was planning to create her own harem. The heroine thought in disbelief, was this really about a harem? She also remembered that Haven had said he would never tolerate such a thing, so she couldn't understand where these rumors had started. Moreover, there was something else that intrigued her. After that, she asked the captain where her brother Edwin was at the moment. The captain replied that he was currently at the Palace Stadium. Immediately after their conversation, the main heroine went there herself. She saw her brother training with a sword. When he noticed his sister, he happily ran up to her, asking if she had come just to see him. The heroine immediately asked whether he truly had nothing to tell her. The young man looked surprised and asked what she was talking about and why she seemed so angry. His sister told him that she knew he had kidnapped people and locked them up in their mansion. Her brother smiled and said that he hadn't kidnapped anyone. He had only offered them the opportunity to work for the royal family. The girl realized that he had indeed done it. He had kidnapped them. With a sad face, she told her brother that taking people somewhere against their will was still kidnapping. She also noted that refusing to let them go home was unlawful imprisonment. But her brother replied that this way they would remain loyal to her forever. And if they ever tried to betray her, they would pay with their lives. He asked how else he was supposed to handle dangerous people who might stab her in the back. The heroine had no answer to that. Then she walked up to him and tapped him on the forehead with her hand, telling him to finally come to his senses. A moment later, the heroine placed her hand on her brother's head and gently stroked it. She said that she had asked him countless times not to do such foolish things. Then she asked him to arrange a meeting with those people and apologize properly, and asked if he understood. Her brother replied, smiling, that first one should ask and then tell someone to go along. Was that what she meant? His sister said he could put it that way, but he should never kidnap anyone again. The main heroine apologized to her brother after that, but he told her it was fine. The girl thought that, in any case, she planned to hire more secretaries and civil servants. After all, it was necessary to reorganize the system to maintain stability. Then she told her brother that they should go and see how normal people handle such things, and asked if he wanted to. He replied, of course he did. Right after that, the heroine went to another part of the estate, wondering whether among the people Eddie had brought there were any who truly wished to work for her. After all, if she didn't follow Haven's will, with his talent it could lead to mass executions, and she didn't know what else to do. As she walked down the corridor, lost in thought, she suddenly saw Haven emerging from around the corner. She immediately asked if he was coming to see her. Then she added that, regardless of what he thought of the situation, there was something she wanted to say. But the man interrupted her and addressed Her Majesty, saying that it seemed she preferred jealous types of men. The main heroine was stunned and wondered what had gotten into him this time. Then they both sat down on a sofa to talk things through. The heroine said that it was all just a misunderstanding between them. After all, she had no intention of creating a harem, and those were nothing but ridiculous rumors. Her companion asked if he really had nothing to worry about. The heroine replied that of course not, after all, he was her only one. Blushing, he said that she was his only one too, since Her Majesty was the only woman for him. The heroine thought to herself that this was simply wonderful. Then she raised her hand and gently touched the man's face. He blushed even more and asked what Her Majesty was doing. The girl looked closely at his face and thought how captivating his gaze was. Haven, in turn, slowly leaned toward her to kiss her. Just a moment later, their lips met in a kiss. The main heroine calmly accepted it and didn't push him away. Afterward, she sat a little stunned. Her future husband blushed deeply and immediately apologized for his rather dry lips. Embarrassed, he nervously asked if perhaps he had rushed things too much. The girl also sat there, flustered, thinking that maybe the kiss was appropriate. After all, they were already engaged. The main heroine knew that engagement was the first step toward marriage, and that married couples were expected to share a bed. Besides, she had already promised Haven there would be no harem. Then the girl thought, what if he became the only man she would ever kiss for the rest of her life? The man sitting across from her looked at her thoughtful expression and asked if he had ruined her mood with his actions. But at that moment, the heroine decided that even if she did kiss him, she wouldn't mind it at all. Then she leaned toward Haven, as if about to kiss him again. But before she could, someone knocked on the door and addressed Her Majesty. The heroine immediately pulled back from the man and told them to come in. A butler entered the room. The Empress asked what had happened. The butler quickly apologized for interrupting her and said he would be brief. Her future husband, sitting beside her, turned away, feeling even more embarrassed. Suddenly, the butler announced that a message had arrived from House Delmy with a marriage proposal. The main heroine and the man beside her were both stunned. The Duke stood up and told Her Majesty to summon the commander of the knights, since the Delmy lands would soon be wiped from the map. The heroine immediately reminded him that she had told him to stay out of Eddie's business. Her companion replied that war with Delmy was now inevitable. The main heroine told him that his request was denied. The Duke apologized to Her Majesty, but said that, with all due respect, as Duke d'Hard he had the right to act. The heroine thought that he was talking nonsense again, and that he was only trying to give her more work to deal with. The Empress told him that if he started a war with them, he could forget about her. The man asked what she meant by that. She repeated that she had already said he was her only one. The Duke asked whether the girl could truly refuse this proposal, saying that he had everything necessary to destroy Delmy. The main heroine thought that this situation was likely the result of their recent provocations. After the refusal, when they returned home, she had received reports from Cecil about movements in the southwest. She understood that since she and Haven were not yet married, despite uniting the North and Finland, those people must have decided this was the perfect time to act. However, she was certain that the Skyers would not make any reckless moves. Therefore, the only possible alliance was between Pagos and Delm. This, of course, would inevitably lead to civil war. In the current situation, the two sides would end up on opposite ends of the battlefield, which, in some ways, was good news. Still, she realized that if Delmy himself had proposed marriage, this was an opportunity she could not afford to miss. The heroine turned to Haven and told him not to worry. She already had bait prepared for them. Her companion replied that, honestly, he still couldn't understand what kind of thoughts were always running through her head. Smiling, the girl asked if he didn't think it would be best to eliminate the Pagos family altogether. He told Her Majesty that she was far more intriguing than he could have imagined. Then the man looked at her attentively and noticed that she seemed cold. Immediately, he took off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. Embarrassed, he mumbled that he thought she might be cold. After all, her hands were quite chilly. He added that he hoped she wasn't uncomfortable. The flustered heroine replied that she only felt cold when a man was being caring toward her. Then she added that she would be fine and that he could go now. Her future husband bowed slightly and said that he would look forward to seeing her again. After all this, the girl summoned Count Delmy. Some time later, he arrived, and she sat on her throne. She asked whether they hadn't once been like bridesmaids, happy for their neighbor's joy. The Count replied that no matter how joyful the occasion, he doubted the girl herself would be pleased, unless he was mistaken. The heroine smiled and asked if he truly believed that by becoming her husband, he would gain more privileges than he already had. Her interlocutor said that he only made the offer because his admiration for Her Majesty had inspired him to do so. Hearing that, the girl thought to herself that he was such a hypocrite. Then she asked how she should act in such a situation. After all, Duke d'Hard was very jealous, and she deeply valued his feelings. On top of that, the news would spread very quickly. Now she wondered whether the man really thought Pagos would like this. That was why she asked if he wasn't afraid of the possible consequences. The interlocutor hadn't expected such a question and was shocked. Then he smiled and said that if there were any consequences, Delmy was certainly no kin to Pagos. Hearing those words, the main heroine became pleased and continued to devise her plan. After that, she told her companion that he was right, After all, Delmoy had endured for about 10 years already. Then she stated that enough time had passed since Missus's invasion and the help provided to the Duchy of Pagos. It turned out that the Empress's observation of Pagos's lands was still ongoing. The main heroine knew that the 4 duchies of the 7 hills had been tasked with guarding the empire, since their military power provided an advantage even without imperial support. However, Delmoy's southern borders had been destroyed due to Missus's schemes. In that difficult time for the south, the east and Duke Pagos had come to its aid. Their help during the severe crisis changed the relationship between the 2 duchies. Yet, in the end, good deeds are quickly forgotten, and the South wished to restore its honor and former standing. The main heroine's interlocutor then declared that the Pagos family were not equals to Delmoy. The girl asked what he meant by that. After all, if one recalled correctly, high-quality ore deposits had recently been discovered on the lands of Viscount Hildel. Was that true, she wondered. However, she continued, saying that this area was located near eastern Alkais. The interlocutor listened to all this, unable to find words or provide any answer. It turned out that this very ore source was located on the border of Mount Delpin. The aristocracy of the East and South began arguing over who rightfully owned the mine. As a result, Hildel sought help from Delmoy and Alkais from Pagos. But the outcome was the same: the South ended up indebted to the East. At that moment, someone brought a document to the Empress. She took it and told her interlocutor that 10 years had already passed, yet the situation remained unchanged. It meant that now neither the North nor Finland would tolerate Delmoy's arrogance any longer. In the end, if Pagos decided to settle the incident, the empire would intervene under the pretext of maintaining peace throughout the world. As for the outraged cries of the southern aristocracy, they were so loud they hardly needed mentioning. Now the main heroine thought that if she managed to bring Delmoy under control while subduing Pagos's fervor, she would be very pleased with the result. Her interlocutor, in turn, told her that, as before, he would simply quote her words. Then, with a bow, he turned and left the room. The heroine thought to herself that she had done everything in her power, and now the choice lay entirely with Delmoy. After that, she rose from her throne and suddenly felt something wrong with her body. Her vision began to blur, and her body refused to move or obey her commands. Her subordinates noticed this at once and called out to Her Majesty, asking what was wrong. They were deeply shocked by her condition and wondered if she was feeling unwell and whether they should urgently summon a doctor. Before the main heroine's eyes, everything began to fade, and soon she lost consciousness entirely. It turned out that in her first life, the girl had lived in complete loneliness. However, she had tried not to take it too personally, until one day she overheard something. She heard people calling her the Ice Queen, blaming her for the suffering of a small child, her brother. At that time, she had no idea how she came back to life, but she decided that in this life, everything would be different. Now, her brother was by her side, laughing even when she said nothing funny, and a caring fiancé who helped her in everything. Even though Eddie still pursued his hobby of adding potions to food, she preferred to eat it and live as long as she could. That was why she had eaten that strange-tasting piece of cake. Some time after that incident, the main heroine finally regained consciousness. The first thing she heard upon waking was her brother's voice. He was saying he forbade his sister from dying and would never allow it. He sat beside her, begging her to open her eyes. The girl saw that at that moment he looked terribly sad. The young man kept telling her not to repeat the mistakes of the past. Suddenly, she placed her hand on her brother's head and called his name, Eddie. He immediately brightened and asked if his sister had finally come to her senses. He added that she simply wasn't allowed to die like that. The heroine, still confused, asked what he was talking about and why she wasn't supposed to die. Then she noticed that her future husband, Haven, was also there. She asked how long she had been lying in that bed. The Duke told Her Majesty that she had been unconscious for about an hour. She asked what the doctor had said about her condition. The man replied that the doctor believed she had been poisoned. The heroine asked in surprise if she had really been poisoned. Just then, the doctor entered the room and inquired about Her Majesty's condition. He also asked whether she was feeling any stomach pain and said that even if the pain was minor, she should tell him. The Empress said that she felt nauseous and chilled. The doctor asked if those were all the symptoms. She added that it was also a little hard to breathe and asked if he could tell what kind of poison it was. He replied that although the symptoms were mild, the disruption of her internal organs and the drop in body temperature indicated the presence of the poison jurial. The girl thought to herself, what kind of poison was jurial? Her fiancé then asked whether there was an antidote for it. The doctor replied that there was none. The man immediately grabbed the doctor by the collar and, in agitation, demanded to know what he meant. How could there be no antidote? If that was true, then he'd better get to work and make one immediately. But the doctor quickly replied that it wasn't necessary. He added that even without an antidote, Her Majesty should recover. When asked to explain, he admitted that he didn't fully understand either. Somehow, Her Majesty's own body was resisting the effects of the poison. Still, jurial was very dangerous, and an antidote had never been created. The Duke asked in surprise how her body could resist the poison on its own. The girl said that everyone had worried for nothing. Apparently, it wasn't so easy to kill her after all. The doctor objected, saying that wasn't true since the poison was powerful enough to kill an ordinary person within hours. At that moment, her brother suddenly mentioned a protective agent called heptonin. He explained that he had been giving it to his sister for the past 3 years. The medicine strengthened her immune system and helped resist toxins. Perhaps that was the reason she had survived. The main heroine was shocked and asked Eddie what exactly he had been feeding her all this time. The doctor said that if that was true, it was excellent news. He would immediately begin creating a medicine based on heptonin. After that, the girl said she was lucky the poison hadn't taken full effect, but the cake had indeed tasted very bitter. Her brother asked in surprise what cake she was talking about. He added that he had told the servants not to add anything to that particular cake. Then he paused and realized the cake had indeed been bitter. The sister told Eddie that she could only say one thing. Even though she had always opposed his habit of mixing substances into food, today it had actually saved her life. Then she slowly sat up and said she thought the matter could be considered closed since she had an appointment today and asked them to call her secretary. Suddenly, her fiancé turned to her and asked if Her Majesty was in her right mind. Then, together with her brother, they gently laid her back down and covered her with a blanket. The Duke noted that she had only just regained consciousness after nearly dying and that she now needed rest. The girl protested, saying she was fine, but her brother told her to keep quiet and stay still. The heroine insisted that the matter was urgent and had to be resolved today. Her fiancé said that in that case, he would handle everything himself and personally report to her later. She just needed to rest for now. Her brother smiled and said that Haven was absolutely right. He had become her husband not just to sit idly by. Then he told his sister to be more careful with food until he caught the culprit. Haven agreed, saying that if she needed help, she should simply ask. The girl thought to herself that this was exactly what she had feared. Her brother then told her to rest, and they both left the room. But suddenly, the sister called out to her brother and asked him to wait a moment. She reminded him that when she woke up, he had told her not to repeat the same mistakes, and she wanted to know what he had meant by that. He looked at her in surprise and immediately ran up to her, hugged her tightly, and asked whether her hearing had been damaged because of the illness. With sadness, he wondered if he should call the doctor again. Hearing that, the main heroine thought, had she really misheard him? Then she told him not to worry, that it must have been her imagination upon waking. He told her not to stay silent if she felt any pain and to tell him right away. The heroine agreed, saying she would, but first, they needed to find the criminal. Then she added that since she was still alive, everything was fine for now. Her brother said that he would handle everything and once again told her to rest before leaving the room. She replied that she would, then lay down to sleep. At that moment, she thought that there would probably be a great commotion in the palace. Some time later, the main heroine woke up again, this time because Haven was checking her temperature. She was still quite feverish, and he said that her fever hadn't gone down yet. but the first thing she did was ask how the meeting had gone. The man remarked that it seemed someone needed medicine for overworking. The heroine said that the situation in the 7 Hills was still unstable. That was why it wasn't the time to be a lazy empress. Her husband asked if she really wanted to be lazy. The girl replied that of course she did. She liked an idle life. Her companion touched her face and said that in that case, he would do everything possible to make her dream come true. Then he pointed to the medicine and told her that it had been prepared by the royal physician. He warned her that it didn't taste pleasant, so it was better to drink it all at once. The heroine immediately drank it, and the man noted that it was very bitter, yet she didn't even flinch. Then he handed her a candy, and the girl said she was already used to bitter tastes. Now, she added, she wanted to see that report. Immediately, the man handed her a sheet of paper with information, saying that the data about the Brandel River was on the last page. The empress began carefully reading through the documents. She noted that, in fact, the river was quite shallow but prone to frequent flooding. The previous emperor's neglect of this issue now forced them to spend a great deal on maintenance. The man remarked that the workers had asked to scale down the project. The girl firmly stated that this would not happen. The Duke continued, saying that the problem wasn't about money, but people were asking how they were supposed to finish everything on time. He told them that there would be no shortage of manpower, so they could start planning their work. His wife asked what had made him say such a thing. He asked in return whether she didn't plan to send troops there under the pretext of building the dam. The main heroine thought that she truly was interested in building a dam on the Brandel River, for 2 very clear reasons. The first, of course, was to bring the river under control. But the second was that it would allow her to position their army between southern Delmai and eastern Pagos. She understood that one meeting had been enough for Haven to figure out that she wanted to set Htldel and Alhais against each other. The heroine immediately told the man that she was glad to have such an intelligent partner. Smiling, he said that he was very happy to hear that. After that, there was a brief silence in the room. Then the girl addressed Haven, and he asked what she wanted. The heroine noted that when she had been invited to participate in that tournament was that the first time he had met Eddie. Her husband confirmed that it was. She then asked whether they had spoken again since then or not. The Duke said that they hadn't, since she had ordered him not to meet with Eddie alone. The heroine remarked that this was rather strange, as it seemed Eddie had been watching him for a long time. The man asked if she really thought Eddie was watching him. The girl said that it seemed that way, otherwise, she couldn't explain why he had chosen him specifically. Then she added that perhaps they simply had similar tastes. She immediately added that she really liked him, and that Eddie liked him too. Her husband said he didn't know whether to be happy or terrified by that news. The girl replied that she meant it sincerely. He added that this was exactly what frightened him, but he would accept it as it was. The empress asked whether he was saying he wasn't happy, and if Eddie was the reason. The man sighed and said that he thought her brother was a very good person for Her Majesty. But honestly, sometimes it was hard for him to understand the reason behind Eddie's deep attachment to her. Smiling, the heroine remarked that he had always been like that, a child craving affection. Her companion apologized to Her Majesty, but said that, in his opinion, her brother had been raised with excessive attachment. Now he resembled a bull who couldn't make decisions on his own. Hearing that, the girl immediately thought that Edwin hadn't been like this at all in her previous life. Back then, her brother, who had never known parental love, grew up in the care of servants. He also had a sister who was always busy and inattentive. The girl could clearly recall only a few moments from her past life. For example, she vividly remembered the day she became a countess. On that day, she was exhausted from hearing the so-called congratulations, which were really mockery, from the imperial family. All she wanted was to return to her room as soon as possible and lie down on her bed. That same evening, when she came home, Edwin was sitting on the stairs holding a plush rabbit she had played with as a child. When the boy saw his sister, he was overjoyed and immediately called out to her. But it was already late at night, and he hadn't gone to bed, probably because he wanted to congratulate her. But then the girl snapped at her younger brother, asking why he wasn't asleep, and then just went straight to her room. At that time, she hated Eddie because, as the youngest in the family, he was free from all responsibility. The girl regretted that moment for the rest of her life, but she got a second chance. That day, she hugged Eddie tightly and sincerely thanked him. From then on, she tried to be kind, and in the end, she had raised an excellent but mischievous young man. And that was something she was proud of. The Empress remarked to her husband that her brother was amusing. Then she told him to just try to get used to it, that was all. The man asked whether that was an order. He also said that he had never thought she was that kind of person. The girl smiled and asked what kind of person he meant. He replied that she was a rather strange one. Smiling, he added that, in fact, even before Count Sutton had visited him, he had wanted to meet her, though he hadn't expected their meeting to happen at that tournament. Hearing that, the heroine was a bit shocked and wondered if he had really wanted to meet her back then, and why. Her husband immediately said that he had been curious about who had managed to do what he had once planned to do himself. The girl was startled and asked whether Haven wanted the imperial throne. The girl understood that no matter how much she liked him, she could not allow him to stay by her side if he wanted her place. After all, who better than she knew what a person was capable of for the sake of power? The main heroine was deeply troubled by this and wanted him to say that he didn't desire power. Her future husband smiled and said that all he had wanted was to get rid of the former emperor. He had no interest in the throne itself. Back then, he had decided to eliminate the emperor before going to war with Gripton, but the emperor had already been replaced. He added that, in just a few months under new rule, the empire of the Seven Hills had completely changed. That was why he wanted to see the extraordinary person who had managed to achieve all this. Hearing these words, the Empress said that he must have been disappointed. But the man immediately replied that wasn't true. He couldn't imagine anyone more deserving of the throne than her. The heroine breathed a sigh of relief and thanked God. She had already been considering abandoning the throne and fighting against her own husband. He smiled and told her she had nothing to worry about. His wife smiled in response and said that she believed him. He placed his hand beside her and asked why she trusted him so easily. Then he added that he had entered the palace, and soon after, she had collapsed from poison. Now he wondered how she could still trust him after that. He also asked whether she knew what kind of medicine he had just given her and why she had calmly drunk it without knowing what it was. The heroine replied that she drank it because she knew it was the correct antidote and asked if she was wrong. Her companion confirmed that she was right. It was indeed an antidote. The girl then asked why he was telling her all this, adding that she still trusted him. The main heroine thought that she felt guilty for how he reacted. But honestly, it wasn't that she didn't trust the man, she trusted Eddie's judgment. Her brother would never have allowed someone capable of harming her to stay by her side. Suddenly, her husband addressed Her Majesty. She asked what he wanted. He said that he liked her too. The heroine was startled, wondering what exactly he had just said. The Empress, blushing, asked whether that was a good thing or if she was misunderstanding. The man leaned very close to her and said that one day, he would definitely steal her heart. At that moment, he tried to kiss her, but the girl pushed him away with her hand and told him to wait. After all, she didn't like people who stole things from her. Then she asked him to put it differently. Her husband kissed her hand and said that he would do everything he could to make her fall in love with him.